The reason Rich Dad, Poor Dad is so successful, it's basically a book on accounting. That's all it is. And so that's why Tom helps me. But this is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was born in Hawaii. I'm fourth generation Japanese American, which means I don't speak Japanese. So a lot of people come and practice on me. I say, hey, I don't do that stuff, I barely speak English. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad is simply a book on accounting. Tom's been one of the best guides on it because this is how it started. So when I was 9 years old, my rich dad very simply said to me, he says, because I was flunking out of school. My poor dad was the head of education for the state of Hawaii. And my rich dad was my best friend's father who never finished school. And the reason he never finished school was because his father died when he was 13. And at 13, rich dad had to take over the family business. So this was the difference. Rich Dad went to school in real school. He didn't have fake teachers. See, a fake teacher is somebody who doesn't do what they teach. Rich Dad was taught by his accountants, his bookkeepers, his attorneys, his banker, his brokers. So he had every day they were in the business of business. And one of the reasons I dropped out of my MBA program was because the teachers were fake. When I was I was a Marine pilot. I was still just coming back from Vietnam in 1973, and I enrolled in the MBA program in Honolulu. I was stationed at Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station. And I sat in the MBA class, and this teacher comes out. The guy was younger than me, because I was already 27. And he didn't know what he was talking about. I asked him a real quick question. I said, are you an accountant? He says, yes, I have a master's in accountancy. I said, that's not the question. And being a Marine, how many people remember the Vietnam era? I was not a popular guy sitting in an MBA class among all these communist students. And, they're spitting at me. So I'm sitting there, and so these kids are like 20 years old, whatever they are. And I've just come back, I've had friends die and all this stuff. I got to put up with their BS, So I'm sitting in this class, and I asked the instructor, I said, tell me, and just repeat the question. I'm a Marine lieutenant. I just don't like BS, And I said, are you an accountant? He says, yes, I have a master's in accounting. So that's not the question. Are you an accountant? He says, I have a master's in accounting. I said, have you ever been an accountant? He says, no. I resigned from the MBA program. He had no idea what he was talking about. And that's one of the problems of young people today. They're going to school with teachers who don't know what they're talking about. I remember I went to military school, the academy in New York, and I asked my calculus teacher, I said, when will I ever use this calculus? He says, I don't know. I said, why do you teach it? He says, I get paid. And today, my brain is still messed up, taking 3 years of calculus. I had no idea what I was studying. Okay? So anyway, Tom has really helped me with these things like this, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad is about income, expense, assets, and liabilities. That's all it's about. And one more thing, the most important word for those of you who are in real business is a statement of cash flow. So very simply, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the statement of cash flow says, assets, put money in your pocket, liabilities, take money from your pocket. That's all the book's about. And so the reason people are in trouble financially is they buy houses they think are assets, but it's really taking money from your pocket, whereas I buy a piece of rental property and put money in my pocket. That's the difference. So that's all Rich Dad, Poor Dad was about. Any comments on this topic?
No, that's why I love Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? So how many world famous books are there about accounting? I think one. So, no, what most people don't recognize either is that liability is okay if it's producing an asset because it's all about the cash flow.
See, the word asset is a noun. A house is a noun. But you don't know if it's an asset or liability until you apply the verb, which is cash flow. So I can have a rental property and it's producing income one day, but it goes vacant and now it shifts into a liability the next day. And that's what happened to many people in 2008. They got hammered because the tenants moved out or they lost their jobs or whatever it is. So basically all Rich Dad was produced 1997, 21 years ago. And it's very simply about what they should teach kids about money. That's all it's about. So this here, and it was called the cash flow quadrant. And this is the cash flow quadrant. So again, I'm 9 or 10 years old. My rich dad's teaching me assets versus liabilities. And then he starts teaching me about the 4 people in the world of business. And how many people read the cash flow quadrant? Good, thank you. For those who haven't, very simply, E stands for employee. My poor dad always said, go to school to get a job. That's why they're employees. My mom wanted me to be a specialist, like a doctor or an attorney or a lawyer or a pizza shop owner. And I said to my mom, I was a C student. I'll never become a doctor. She says, you're right, you're not going to make it. But anyway, but this is where Tom comes in, is because, as Tom will tell you, employees pay 40%. All these guys who are becoming entrepreneurs today, they leave their jobs, or the colleges are teaching kids to be entrepreneurs. They move into a higher tax bracket without financial education. And business owner, which is 500 employees or more, these guys pay about 20%. And this is worldwide, right, Tom?
Worldwide.
And these guys pay 0%. So when I was 9 or 10 years old, my rich dad said, which one would you like to be? So this is Shark Tank. These guys are passive investors. They buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds, save money. These are inside investors. They're the inside the deal. Very different. So Tom's going to talk quickly right now about the Trump tax cut and how it affected this year.
Yeah, so fundamentally, when you look at these different rates, it's just a matter of what the government is rewarding, right? Because the tax law is just a series of incentives. It's an incentives for things like creating employment. So these guys create a lot of employment, they get a lot of tax incentives to do that. Or creating housing or hotels or whatever type of investing, agriculture. So these guys get a lot of tax.
Or oil and gas or food and things like that, which is right here. See, these guys here have really good tax advantages, right?
Right, because this is what the government wants you to do. They'd like you to put your money here. If you put your money here or here, they're going, that's fine. We're happy to take your money. The reason these guys are so high is because they're paying not only the employee share of the taxes, but they're also paying the employer's share of the taxes. So that's why you end up in such a big tax bracket down self-employed. And this, again, worldwide, not just the U.S.
Yeah, the numbers may vary a little bit, but generally that's the way, because the government's got to have these guys as partners, right?
Well, yeah, because these guys are doing what the government needs somebody in the private market to do, that the government doesn't want to do themselves. So they're encouraging people to do this. Now, what happened in the Trump tax bill last year is fascinating, because these guys, the money had to come from somewhere, right? So these guys ended up losing a lot of their tax benefits. These guys lost a lot of tax benefits, and permanently, by the way, not temporarily. These guys got to see their corporate tax rate go from 35% to 21%.
Amen, George.
40% tax break immediately. So they had a huge tax break. These guys are the only people in the US who did better than these guys. They saw, for example, a real estate deduction on $1 million property going from, the $100,000 the first year to $300,000 the first year. In fact, I was talking to Mike Maselli and I said, how does it feel to actually have real estate be a better first-year deduction than oil and gas now? That's what happened in the 2017 law.
The point here, this is poor dad and this is rich dad. So, and again, these guys are insiders. Why do I like real estate? Because I'm on the inside. I don't want to be on the outside. I don't have any stocks. I might have a few stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs, because I don't like being on the outside. Plus, I don't get the tax breaks. And by the way, if I could say something, I've had a pretty checkered career. My background, I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York, and my specialty is oil and gas. I was a tanker driver. So I drove oil tankers for Standard Oil of California. That's why I invest with Mike Maselli and other oil companies. Because let's say I gave Mike Maselli $100,000, what's my tax break immediately?
Immediately $40,000 back in your pocket.
Try getting that from Exxon. You don't get it. So why would I touch ExxonMobil or Standard, my own old company? And so after I sailed for Standard Oil, that's why I like oil and gas. I'm a resource guy. And after that's when I joined the Marine Corps, because the Vietnam War was still on. So basically, this is my background. I do practice what I preach. I do this. Tom, do I have assets?
A lot.
Yeah. And the reason I have assets is my rich dad taught me just playing Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, 1031 tax-deferred exchange, red hotels. So I own red hotels. That's how I get up to 500 employees. Golf courses, oil wells, and gold, lots of gold. Any comments on this stuff here, Tom?
Well, I can say, being Robert's personal accountant, he's told me I can say this, is that what he's done is pretty amazing, because if you think about it, so the more income you make over here, the more taxes you pay, right? But the more assets you buy over here, the fewer taxes you pay. So the more real estate, Robert makes all sorts of money, selling books and in his business and so forth. What he has to do is push that money into assets, else he's going to pay a ton of taxes. It's really that simple.
Yeah, so that's what I go into right now. It's called the infinite return. So in 1973, when I came back from Vietnam, my poor dad wanted me to go here and get my master's, get my PhD like he did, and my rich dad said, come here. So I went here, as you can tell, because I didn't like school personally. I liked military school. I loved flight school. I just hated academics and school teachers because I don't like fake teachers. And Tom and I have taught all over the world, haven't we?
We have.
And the worst teachers are?
Accounting professors. It's true.
No, they would have another ass from a hole in the ground. You know what I mean? No, but they don't understand cash flow, right?
That's the challenge. They don't.
Because they go operate on the definition of the word versus the technical or the useful benefit of the word. That's the big difference. That's why, as you know, Nancy Pelosi and Obama and many of the other our leaders, that's why the cash keeps flowing out. They don't know assets from liabilities. That's why we're going broke as a nation. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is an infinite return. And very simply, is if you have a real financial education, you'll never need money and you'll never pay taxes. But they don't teach that in school. And by the way, I've been working with the real estate guys for 20 years now, and Tom and I will be on their summit at sea. And this year the theme is the infinite return. So if you can, there's only a few spaces left on the cruise, but many of my advisors will be with me with Tom and I on this cruise. And the whole theme is how you make money with nothing, because you don't need money to make money. It's one of the biggest lies. And when people say that money doesn't make you happy, well, working at a job you hate doesn't make you happy, and paying a lot of tax doesn't make me happy. And being on this side makes me very happy. And I'm glad there's people who like being on this side, but I didn't like it here. I wanted to be here. So this is called the infinite return, and Tom will guide. He is really my adult supervision up here, okay? So Tom is the A student, and I was I flunked English twice, and I'm now known as the best writing author, best-selling author, The good news is I did get to one of the best schools, the United States Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York. I got 2 nominations, one to Naval Academy at Annapolis, one to Kings Point. I took Kings Point because Kings Point is the highest paid graduates in the world. Back in 1965, we're making about $120K a year, and a lot of it tax-free, which is not much money today, but $120,000 in 1965 was a lot of money for a 21-year-old kid. And I gave it all up to go fly for the Marine Corps, which proved not very smart. But anyway, but thank God, because I knew I was going to be rich. I just did it, I just wanted to have some fun and fly for a while. But this is the mission of the Rich Dad Company, formed in 1997, was to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. Because ladies and gentlemen, we're in trouble. We're in very, very big trouble. And the trouble is our kids are leaving school stupid and poor. There's now new evidence coming out more and more. If a kid is born to a poor family, they will die poor. There is no chance for them. That's the problem, because family and religion and education has more effect on them than anything else. So in 1997, we formed this company. Today we're going to talk to you about infinite returns, infinity. And it's called an infinite ROI. And when we talk about ROI, it equals return on information. Information we don't get in school. And information our political leaders should actually educate themselves with. Trump knows this stuff. But unfortunately, Pelosi, Obama, and Clintons, they only know one thing: steal money. That's the problem with them. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I just don't like people who steal. Trump lies, but he doesn't steal that much, okay? So, we do need somebody who knows money at least. So this is Reuters. You can see I'm not the best student. I just tore this out of the newspaper. October 13th, 2008. Kushner likely paid little taxes for years. I mean, they make it sound like a bunch of crooks for not paying taxes. And it says Kushner's tax bill reflected the use of a tax benefit known as depreciation. Tom, is depreciation criminal?
Depreciation is very intentional, and the U.S. has better depreciation rules than any country on earth right now. The fact is that you buy a piece of real estate that's rented out or used in your business, you're probably going to get to deduct about 30% the year you buy it. So it's a huge incentive right now, and way bigger than most countries.
I want you to know we're not saying buy real estate, because right now I'm a net seller. I've never sold real estate, but I'll explain why I'm selling for the first time. But it's not a time to buy because of taxes, is that correct?
Well, the tax benefits are enormous right now.
But you don't buy because of tax, okay?
Right.
It says Kushner's wife, Ivanka Trump, received at least $82 million outside income in 2017. How much tax do they pay on $82 million, Tom?
My guess is zero.
And that's what we're going to teach. That's called an infinite return, okay? And so it talks about Kushner being a real estate guy. Anyway, advocates of financial education, Trump and I, 2006, we wrote Why We Want You to Be Rich. And then Midas Touch in 2011. I know some people love him, some people hate him. I think he's a great guy. I learned a lot working with him for 8 years. And my wife, who I know people think women hate him, my wife loves him. She just thinks he's a great guy. Now, he is a womanizer, but he didn't mess with my wife, thank God. I had to kill him. What was your impression of Trump when you met him?
Yeah, I met him a couple of times. I actually met him back in 2011, and he's brilliant. He's a very smart guy. I think he says really stupid stuff, but he's very extraordinarily confident. Extraordinarily confident in what he believes.
So this is how I got to ROI. My first real estate seminar was in 1973. Again, I was still filing for the Marine Corps, and it was a 3-day course. I paid $385 for it, and the instructor said at the end of 3 days, he says, your education begins when you leave school. And that's what I say to most young people today, especially millennials. He says, your education begins when you leave school. And what most millennials are finding out is they didn't learn anything at school. That's why so many of them are unemployed. But anyway, in 1973, the deal was I had to look at 100 properties in 90 days and write a one-page analysis on the property. Of the 30-something in our class, 3 completed the assignment. Most people were too busy to get rich. So the ROI, Satori, is a moment of enlightenment. So as I was going through those 100 properties, my instructor, who was a real estate investor, he showed us his properties, he showed us his financials, he showed us everything that a real investor does. A real I investor, not one of these BS investors over here. And he says, you will find this property and your world will change. And a Satori is a Buddhist word. I'm not pumping religious, I'm not Buddhist either, my sisters are, but I'm not. Buddhist Satori means, it's this moment you actually see, holy mackerel. And what I saw was an infinite ROI. I would never need money again for the rest of my life. I was a free man. Okay, that's what Satori means. Some people, I used to get it reading Playboy, but I got it now with money. But anyway, the property was island of Maui, one of the hottest properties at the time. It was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath beach condo. Sales price was $18,000. They asked for $10,000 down. I paid for the credit card, so it was 100% debt, and I made $25. That was an infinite return. My life changed. I went, holy mackerel. Holy mackerel. So the reason I can do this is because I'm always going for the infinite return, right?
Always.
Always. So when people say, how did you get here so fast? It was because I don't need money. That's the difference. That's the only difference. If you need money, you're always slow over here. Anything you want to say about that?
No, not only that, but remember the tax benefits come from more assets. And the more you use other people's money, right, you get the tax benefits. The banks don't get tax benefits for lending you money. You get tax benefits for borrowing the money. So that's why, I mean, the tax benefits are so big because all that money that Robert makes over here, here, and here, all that money can go back into here, can go back into the asset.
Forget Tom's book, is Tax-Free Wealth. That's why, you know, I kept changing accountants. Some are really good, some are big name guys. A lot of them are stupid. But anyway, without Tom's guidance, I could not have got there so fast. You know, because you have to have a good, smart CPA with, as my Mexican friends say, cojones. You know what I mean? You're going up against the government. We're not going against them. Like a lot of accountants believe you should pay taxes. If some accountant says you should pay taxes, fire them immediately. You know, they're costing you money. Any comments on that?
Well, hopefully, any IRS agents in the room here? You know, if you think about it, you graduate from college and you're an A student, the IRS probably isn't your first choice of where you're going. So it's, you know, to be afraid of the IRS, to me, it just means, wow, you must, you know, not know much about taxes if you're afraid of the IRS, because they're not, you know, they're good people, they're doing their best, but the reality is that, you know, a good tax accountant should know way more about taxes than the IRS.
What's your background? How did you learn not to be afraid of the IRS?
So I have a Bachelor of Arts in Accounting from the University of Utah and a Master's of Tax from the University of Texas. I spent 7 years with Ernst & Young, including 3 years in their national tax department, back when the last big law change, back in 1986. And then I spent 14 years as an adjunct professor in the Masters of Tax program at Arizona State University. And for the last 25 years have bought and sold and built accounting practices. And Robert and I travel around the world talking about this stuff.
Get his book. If you don't want it, you can get there faster if you can drop taxes legally. We're in Russia talking to these entrepreneurs in Russia. What did they say?
They said that the laws are really just suggestions.
And the reason so many cheat on taxes is these guys.
Right. The challenge is that if you're stuck over here, you know, that's kind of stands for stuck. If you're stuck over here and you can't do much and you don't have a good advisor that kind of tells you what these rules are, what are you going to do? I mean, because nobody likes paying 40 to 60% taxes. So that's why they cheat. You know, when you're over here, there's no reason to cheat because you're going to pay fewer taxes anyway just by the fact of being here.
And people are afraid of audits. These guys are always audited, right?
Yeah, so remember the last election, and Trump said he would release his tax returns when he was no longer under audit. And I burst out laughing. That was the smartest thing I'd ever heard. Because Trump's so big, he's always under audit. We will never see those tax returns.
I hope there's no Democrats in this room. No, I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I'm a capitalist. I don't like giving my money away when I don't have to give it away. And I would rather partner with the government. That's how I look at it, okay? So this is Island of Maui. That was 1973. The Rich Dad Company in 1996 was founded. My wife and I, Kim, we started the cash flow game, and we raised $250,000 through a private placement. And we agreed to give the investors $500,000 back, which in 3 years we paid all the money back. And so we make millions every month. Our return is infinite. Rich Dad is just running purely on none of my own money, okay? So then this was Tucson, Arizona. Tom helped us on this one. This is a real estate play. We had 144 units, 10 acres. The price was $7 million. We had 2.5 million equity. And that was the cash raise. Much of it came from my wife and I, but we had 2 other investors in it. And then we borrowed 4.5 million in debt and 5 million in a construction loan. 144, 2.5, 3 years later, went to 108 units. We're now at 252 units. The new appraisal came in at 15 million because of rents. Our NOI went up, net operating income went up. So the bank gave us a $12 million new loan. The $12 million amortized or paid off the old loan, the construction loan, which left $3 million. We gave back the $2.5 million to investors, and we split $500,000 each. We're now infinite, and we put money in our pocket. Tom, that $500,000 that came into my pocket, why was that tax-free?
So, you borrow money, it's not taxable, is it? Because at some point you have to pay it back. So all of the money that came out, anytime you refinance a deal, that's tax-free money. You borrowed it from the bank, no tax.
And the reason for that was in '71, as most of you know, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And for money to be created, we had to borrow. So when these idiots tell you get out of debt, that's almost un-American. Money is only created when you borrow. That's why they give you, what's that, United Plus, Mileage Plus. We'll give you extra free miles if you borrow money. They want you to borrow money. And these financial planners are telling you get out of debt. Fire that guy, say, hey, tell me how to get into debt. But again, that's the difference between rich dad and poor dad. Debt is good, debt is bad. It's a matter of financial unintelligence. So we split $500,000, net income a year, 2017 is $103,000, infinite ROI. Now it's not, since then we've gone, I don't know how many units that was, but now we have 6,950 units. We can get there faster because we're using debt and we pay no taxes. So the 103,000, I don't know what it is today. Is that how we did it? I think comments on that.
Well, no, in fact, I've seen them do this on multiple properties. I mean, this is the formula, right? This is the formula. It's the formula in real estate, it's the formula in oil and gas. Frankly, it's the formula in business. So if you don't have to pay tax because you reinvest the money in the business or you reinvest the money in real estate, then you can use the taxes you would have paid to the government and reinvest those, and you can even borrow money. So it's almost an addiction, right? The more assets you buy, the less tax you pay. The more assets you buy, the less tax you pay.
It's worse than that. If I don't buy assets, I pay taxes. If I don't borrow money, I pay taxes. So for those of you who have an opportunity to go talk to the real estate guys, the investor cruise next spring is on infinite return. I'll be there with some of our other advisors. That's what we teach. I don't teach you to go to school, get a job, and put your money in mutual funds. I'm not that cruel. That is cruel and unusual behavior. So anyway, go talk to the real estate guys for our cruise next year. But why the Rich Guy was formed in 1997 was what does school teach you about money? Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, buy a house, and put your money in a stock market, 401ks, mutual funds, ETFs, and savings. That's a recipe for disaster. And millions of people, my generation, the baby boom generation, are about to get wiped out because we're the first generation without a pension plan. In 1974, ERISA came in, Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which today is known as the 401k. In 2008, it turned out to the 201k. People get wiped out. This is the Dow for 125 years. You can see that it's been going up. But it was a giant crash in 1929. Look at 1929. That was not a giant crash. That was a pimple. But you look at what happened. Nixon took us off the gold standard in '71. I was flying in Vietnam in 1972. And I have a new book coming out next spring. It's called Fake. Fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. That's when they rich, like the central guys who own the central banks, like the Rothschilds, that's when they start ripping us off, was when they got the dollar off the gold standard. Because up until 1971, the dollar was good as gold because it was, from the Bretton Woods Agreement, it was backed by gold. But they don't teach you that in school. They tell you, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and invest for the long term in the stock market. It is a suicide mission. So this was the Rich Dad Company was formed in 1997 because I could see today's crisis coming. If you look at this, today we're in a triple top. We're going down, big time. Anybody who's been an investor, a stock trader knows a triple top is worse than a double top. The double top was 2008. We're now in a triple top. There's a possibility that we're going into beyond, there's booms, there's busts, there's crashes, and there's collapses. There's outside about 5% possibilities U.S. economy collapses because of the fake dollars we're in, and bad education, and corrupt Wall Street, and corrupt central banks. As a surfer, I always knew the third wave was the killer wave. You better not get caught at that. That's how did I learn my technical trading? I cut school and went surfing. Anyway, next question. October 11th, 2008, the IMF warns the biggest source of risk comes from the state and local government retirement plans. Simon Black, Sovereign Man, he talks at the real estate guys' courses also. Spain's pension fund is fully depleted. You think that Spanish people have problems today? Italy isn't much better. Those are the two bigger countries in the EU. The United Kingdom has trillions of pounds worth of unfunded public pensions. Switzerland has a public pension that's only 69% funded. Any comments on that, Tom?
I mean, it speaks for itself. I mean, Switzerland is what we think of as the safe country, right? And only 69% funded. From an accounting standpoint, that's a nightmare.
Martin Armstrong, the largest pension fund in the United States is the CalPERS for the state and local governments. California state's very serious insolvency. CalPERS is underwater $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Who's going to bail them out? Because states cannot print money. All they can do is raise taxes. Social Security they can print, Medicare they can print, but they can't print for CalPERS. The state that's the worst is Obama's old state, Illinois. Their pension plans are toast. So Reuters, PBGC is going broke. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation is insolvent. The PBGC has got major acts to backstop troubled pensions. Every baby boomer today is in trouble because every pension they're counting on, including Social Security and Medicare, are in serious trouble. That means, the people complain that millennials are living at home. Well, what happens when the baby boomers move in with their millennials? That's the future. And, Jane was talking about assisted living. I'm in assisted living also. Some assisted living homes are $20,000 a month. That's more than people make a year, a month. So assisted living is a great business, because it's guaranteed we're going to get older if you don't die. Dying might be the better way out, really. But anyway, the gap. This is the gap in America, the rich. You can see the poor getting poor. And these are working poor. These guys have jobs. My brother was a property manager in Hawaii. He interviewed these guys sleeping in their cars. The homelessness in Hawaii, California, and Seattle and New York is going through the roof. So my brother, being a property manager, had to get these guys off his properties. He interviewed these guys sleeping in their cars. They said, well, I have a job. I just can't afford a house. And then my brother was at the beach, and he saw one of his classmates living on the beach. He says, oh, I'm so sorry, you're homeless. He says, no, I'm not homeless. I'm living on the beach. He says, what's the difference? He says, I'm renting my house out. I make more money that way. And he gets tax deductions on that income, right, Tom? So that's why I like the real estate guys, charts, is that even the housing prices went down, rents went up. That's how you think. It's not about, is a mutual fund a good investment? Mutual fund, you put up 100% of the money, take 100% of the risk, take 100% of the losses, and you get 20% if any gains. The poor and middle class, this is what happens. They go to school, they get a job, they pay taxes, goes to the government. It's all cash flow. They put an IRA, goes to Wall Street, and they buy a house, goes to the bank. That's why the poor and middle class are going broke, because they went to school, they're told, get a job, work hard, save money, get a 401k. Any comments on this cash flow pattern, Tom?
Well, I mean, what I see is, I look at that, and it's all cash flow going out.
Yeah.
There's no cash flow going in.
They don't know how to turn the cash flow back in, because they went to school. That was my poor dad, PhD. Poor, helpless, desperate. That's what it stands for. And they run our school systems. They're teaching your kids and your grandkids. And we wonder why we're in trouble. It starts in school. No financial education in school. That's why I started the Rich Dad Company. This is really simple stuff. You don't have to go to Harvard to understand these little squiggly lines. This was all Rich Dad, Poor Dad was. This is cash flow quadrant. Still our bestseller. This is why they get richer. Taxes, debt, I reinvest, 1031 tax-preferred exchanges. And I buy gold and silver. I do not save money. I save gold and silver. I have millions in gold and silver because I don't need money. I don't need cash. I have cash, but it's short-term cash. I'm waiting for the next crash, I can go back in. I save gold and silver. Any comments on that, Tom?
Well, on all of this, every time you buy an asset, your taxes keep going down. So even if you have income from other sources, a business or a job or something else, with the right tax planning, all of those asset purchases over here, all of these assets that you're buying over there create more tax deductions, which means that you send less money to the government.
Yeah, I use debt to buy assets, and the more debt I use, the less taxes I pay.
That's right.
And the more assets I buy, the less taxes I pay. And instead of selling, I don't like to sell because that's a capital gains, right?
Right, but if you just borrow the money out, if you just borrow against it, then that's not taxable.
Good accountant, good attorney, and smart advisors, you can get there. I was a C student. I really don't know much. Tom will verify that, right, Tom? But I do have a smart wife, right?
Very, very smart wife.
The key to success is marry a smart woman, okay? I got that?
That's his key.
Yeah, as my wife wasn't rich either. She just understood real estate. But she says, when it comes to money, women are much smarter than men. And I'd have to agree. So anyway, that's why she wrote the book, Rich Woman. Okay. But this here is McDonald's formula. This was my formula as a kid. If I get $1 million, what does that mean, Tom?
Well, so what that means is I have to go borrow $4 million to buy a $5 million asset so you don't pay tax on the $1 million.
You know, and wherever Tom and I go all over the world. Some moron, you know, will raise their hand and says, they say is, you can't do this here. And what I say is, you have a McDonald's? What do you think McDonald's is doing? Read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you know, Ray Kroc's. When my friend from the University of Texas asked Ray, he says, Ray asked the class, the MBA class, he says, what business is McDonald's in? Answer was, real estate. Today, McDonald's owns more real estate than the Catholic Church, because if you saw the movie Founder, it's in there. All these yo-yos and all the countries we go to, these academic types say, you can't do this here. And all I say is, do you have a McDonald's here? The trouble is, they can't see it, because they went to school. Anything else on this, Tom?
No, I mean, to me, it's a very simple formula. Yeah, I don't think you get any more simple than that. And that's how you don't pay taxes legally. Because again, everything we're talking about is how not to pay taxes legally. Do what the government wants you to do.
Yeah. Debt makes you richer. Debt and taxes make you richer. This side, debt and taxes make you poorer on this side. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, invest in the stock market, get out of debt. How taxes make the rich richer? Any comments on that, Tom?
Well, what's interesting is this is common around the world, by the way. We were in Australia early this year and then South Africa before that. And these are common tax rates around the world. So the U.S. is actually, this last tax law change has actually made us a bit of a tax haven compared to the rest of the world. So we're better. We're still, that E&S quadrant are still pretty high.
But the problem with the tax breaks is making the U.S. dollar stronger, which may bring the economy down. Because as the dollar gets stronger, everybody gets weaker because China and Japan are in serious trouble. So the dollar getting stronger means our trade deficit increases because we don't expect export as much. So we have four problems facing America today. Number one is rising interest rates. Number two is China. Number three is, what was I going to say? Strong dollar. Number four, retirement. That's why we might come down, those four choices. So this is tax-free income here. Depreciation, and that's that Jared Kushner thing. Oh, he's cheating using depreciation. What is that, Tom? So
depreciation is really just basically supposedly the wear and tear on a building. The difference is that, you know, if you buy a chair or you put in carpet, it really does wear out, whereas buildings tend to last a lot longer than the depreciation.
Is this depreciating right now?
You can watch it.
Yeah, it's accelerating.
Actually, carpet now we get to write off the first year. We don't even have to depreciate it.
Are the lights depreciating?
First year.
Furniture?
First year.
Yeah. Appreciation. Why is appreciation tax-free?
Well, so appreciation, remember, we don't pay tax until we actually recognize that gain. So we can appreciate all we want in gold and silver and real estate, oil and gas. If we don't sell it, we don't actually pay the tax. So we can keep it appreciating, we can borrow against it, and not pay the tax.
Amortization.
So amortization is great because you've got debt that you use to buy this over here, but that debt is being paid for by your tenants, customers, etc.
And this is what the New York Times says is some kind of criminal offense. So anyway, ROI Satori, moment of enlightenment, ROI, infinite, can be created with any asset. Once you see it, you can do with anything. And that's what we'll be teaching in the real estate guys' schools. You can do it with stocks, bonds, options, avocados, anything. But you have to have the education. And that's what our school systems are not teaching us. And that's why we're in serious trouble, because we're run by idiots. So thank you.
Two women that each sold a business to to Berkshire Hathaway, to me actually, for many, many, many millions of dollars. Both of them started with $2,500. By a coincidence, it was the exact same amount. It was everything they had in the world. And one of them was a woman who landed in Seattle in 1917, couldn't speak a word of English, had a tag around her neck. The tag said, Fort Dodge, Iowa. The Red Cross got her to Fort Dodge, where she was reunited with her husband, who had come to the country a couple of years earlier. And she lived in Fort Dodge for 2 years, and as she put it, she felt like a dummy. She couldn't pick up the language. She couldn't learn a word. And so she and her husband decided to move to Omaha. So they came to Omaha in 1919, and there she found a small colony of Russian Jews, so she started feeling more at home. And then as her oldest daughter went to school, she would come home, this daughter, Frances, and she would teach her mother the words she'd learned in school that day. And this woman, Rose Blumpkin, spent 20 years saving money, bringing first her siblings over, her mother and father, $50 at a time. She sold used clothing to do it. She had 4 children during this period. And by 1937, after 20 years, she'd saved $2,500. She went to Chicago and she bought what she could of furniture. Her dream had always been to open a furniture store. And this woman who had never gone to school one day in her life, with $2,500, but with the same spirit that the people in this room had about having a dream and working to accomplish that dream, she built a business which she sold to me in 1983 for $60 million approximately, and which did $1.5 billion worth of business last year. The 4th generation is working in that business. This woman, Rose Blumpkin, she worked for me until she was 103. And then she retired and she died the next year, which is a lesson to all of Berkshire's managers that premature retirement, you can't tell what's going to happen. But Mrs. B, with her $2,500, one further fact about her, she could not read or write. And she went into a furniture business, and she didn't bring anything unique in furniture, but she brought a determination to succeed. She knew she could outwork anyone else. She knew she cared about her customers. She worked at very low gross margins, but she built this incredible business.
I'm the best operator, not I'm bragging, in the country with common sense. I don't know education, books, percentage. I use the old-fashioned way. Tell the truth, buy right, sell cheap.
And I saw one other woman who did a similar thing with $2,500. I paid her hundreds of millions of dollars for her business. So I decided to go to the source and get these people before, I don't want you guys coming around to me asking me hundreds of millions of dollars. I'd like to join in with you much earlier. So I've followed this group. Today I'd like to tell you about one other small business person. This person, I went to buy his business from him, and he turned me down, which was very wise. But this was a fellow who was born about 8 years before I was. He was born in 1922. He was we'll call him Jack, lived in the Midwest. He was a pretty good athlete, didn't like school much. And I'm going to tell you one thing early in the story. Maybe you can figure out who the guy was. The company he built hires more college graduates each year than any other company in the United States. And this fellow, who was destined for this but did not know it, Jack, went to college for a year and then dropped out. He really wasn't that interested in school. And the year he dropped out was 1941. The United States became under attack. He went down to the Army Air Force recruiting station, volunteered, and they turned him down because he had hay fever. So he went over to the Navy and again volunteered, and they took him. They put him on an aircraft carrier. He flew small flight airplanes during World War II, got 2 distinguished flying crosses from the Navy, and then he came back to the Midwest. So now we've got a young guy. Probably by this time he would be 23 or 24 years old. And the interesting thing is, he got back to the Midwest, and he actually kind of went from one job to another for a short period of, or not such a short period of time. And he finally became a used car salesman at a Cadillac dealership in St. Louis, Missouri. And at age 35, having moved up in the organization, the sales organization, he said to his boss, could I go into car leasing business with you? The boss said, well, if you'll cut your salary in half and you'll come up with, I think it was $25,000, which he borrowed, we can become partners in a car leasing company. So my friend Jack started at age 35 in the car leasing business. And he had 7 cars. It was pretty slow. In fact, one of the things he did was whenever the phone rang, he let it ring 3 or 4 times so people would think that he was very busy answering other phones. And of course, it was the only call he was going to get all day. So his first venture was okay, but it wasn't really going to go anyplace. And there's a lesson in this for all of us. At age 40, he decided, with 17 vehicles, 17 cars, he was going to go into competition in the rent-a-car business. So now he's taking on Hertz and Avis and National and people like that who have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cars. And he's got 17 cars, and his cars aren't any different than theirs. I mean, he's buying them from General Motors or Ford or Chrysler. And he can't get the airport locations. Those companies have them all sold up. But he was determined that he would basically offer the customer, can't offer him a different car, but he can offer them friendlier service than they've ever seen. And so he started a company. He named it after the battleship that he'd flown from in the Pacific, which was the USS Enterprise. And he died about a year and a half ago. But when he died, his rent-a-car company, starting with those 17 cars, was worth more than Hertz and Avis and all the rest of the rental cars put together. The man's name was Jack Taylor, and his son, Andy Taylor, is a good friend of mine, runs the business now. A grandchild is in the business. There'll probably be a 4th generation along the line. So this man, in the United States, he didn't invent artificial intelligence. He didn't do anything that, just like Mrs. B selling furniture, I mean, that any one of us could have entered those businesses. But he lived by the creed, basically, of delighting his customers and working with people and establishing the relationship with them so that they in turn would want to delight the customers. He couldn't go out there and take care of every rental car possibility, but he learned how to project himself and his attitude toward his fellow man and his desire, to make a friend out of every customer. He managed to take very ordinary cars and turn them into this extraordinary business from virtually nothing. And it illustrates several points. One is, you don't necessarily get it right exactly right the first time. I mean, the car leasing business, basically you were competing on the cost of money to finance cars. And it's very hard to delight a customer when you just give them the car and tell them to send you a monthly check for 5 years and you'll be back at that time. So his talents were being wasted basically in that business. But at the age of 40, with all of that experience behind him, he found the golden key, and he took a very ordinary business and turned it into an absolutely extraordinary operation, and just like Mrs. B or Rose Blumpkin did with furniture. And he didn't worry about whether the Federal Reserve was going to tighten or ease. He didn't worry about whether the stock market was up or down yesterday. He didn't worry about the things he couldn't change, but he did focus on the one thing he could change, and that was the customer's experience.
I came to work every day with the attitude, I'm going to enjoy life today, and this is going to be a good day. And people that work with me are going to be terrific people, and my customers are all going to think we're wonderful.
And I have seen the one that got away, Enterprise. I went down to Florida and tried to talk him into selling to Berkshire, and he was smart enough not to do it. Probably the value of the company has quadrupled since I made that visit. But he was smart enough to see he would find that business. Henry Ford, as you may know, failed twice before he started the Ford Motor Company in 1903. I mean, the test isn't whether you get the greatest business idea in the world the first time out. The test is whether you keep learning as you go along what your strengths are and what you can do for your customers, what you can bring especially to the party. And to do that, you need the education that I know you've received through 10,000 small businesses, but you need a genuine desire day in, day out to delight the customer. I've never seen a business, and I've seen a lot of businesses, but I've never seen one that delights the customer that doesn't succeed. I mean, what you want is that customer the next day when they think, do I want to rent a car or do I want to buy some furniture? What goes through their mind? It's the place where they've had a great experience. I don't know what I paid for this tie. Actually, probably if somebody gave it to me, but for the purposes of this speech, I will say I have no idea. But or the shirt I'm wearing, or this. But I do know I will remember how I was treated. Long forget about the price, but you never forget whether you had a good experience or a poor experience with the purchase experience. You'll have a hard time finding a person that's had a wonderful experience, a delighted experience in purchasing anything that isn't going to come back. And similarly, if the memory is of rudeness, indifference, whatever it may be, they're never going to come back. And as a small business owner, and as you grow, you have to not only be able to project that interest in people's well-being, in delighting them yourself, but you have to do it through other people. You won't be able to do it through people who themselves do not feel they're being fairly treated, that their views aren't appropriately considered. So you really do have to learn to multiply yourself through other people. And I advise the young people to come to Omaha. We have a number of classes. Key is to certainly, in terms of your personal life, the most important decision you'll make is the spouse that most of you will likely have. And it's very important to surround yourself with people that are better than you are. You are going to move in the direction of the people you associate with. So you constantly, I've been enormously lucky in that respect. I mean, I've just had teachers and friends and a spouse who's a better person than I was, and I had enough sense to learn from these people that life went better if you behave better yourself. It took a while. So I advise you to seek out, as your partner in business, your partner in life, whatever it may be, look for the people that actually are examples to you, rather than somebody that you think you need to straighten out yourself. And simple rules like that, delighting customers, working through other people, associating with people that will cause you to move in a better path than you might otherwise have. It will take you so far in life that it's hard to believe. I mean, they took Rose Blumpkin without being able to speak a word of English, couldn't read or write, and they took her to what is now a $1.5 billion business. And incidentally, there's been no money put in it since the $2,500. That's been the total capital paid into the Nebraska furniture market. I think if you looked at Enterprise, I don't know their books the same way, but my guess is that very little equity capital has been added to.
I'm the best operator, not I'm bragging, in the country with common sense. I don't know education, books, percentage. I use the old-fashioned way. Tell the truth, buy right, sell cheap.
Buying cheap and selling cheap did not endear Mrs. B to Nebraska businessmen. They boycotted her for decades, and so did their suppliers and their bankers. She sold a 90% share in her store. The buyer, self-made Nebraska billionaire Warren Buffett. The price, $55 million.
If I could start a business and I had first draft pick, like in the NFL, of the 25 top graduates of the top business schools in the country, and the 25 picks from the top CEOs of the Fortune 500, or I could take Mrs. B to run the business, I'd take Mrs. B. There aren't any other Mrs. B's.
Do you have any advice to somebody who wants to start their own business?
Honey, how can you give an advice? Anybody. I got 640 people working in the store. Some of them don't know how to figure 2 and 2 is. They have to have the computer. You can give advice. Everything is in you. God bless me. I had a talent. Anything I done, I made money.
Enterprise over the years, the business built on itself. So I want to tell you, I admire this group enormously. When I met Dr. Mello's class on September 22nd, 8 years ago, I was thrilled. And I admire people that are doing what you have done. Working hard at your job at the same time, you took on an added lot of hard work to further your skills. 99% graduate. I mean, that's a mind-blowing statistic. And I'm looking at 2,200 people here who I admire. I'm cheering for you, and I can tell you the best is yet to come. Thank you.